the trend at the moment is triathlon, whether it's your local triathlon or Ironmans, half Ironmans. Everyone seems to be really into it. It's a trendy thing to do. And you are training for your half Ironman, but you have a massive history in triathlon with your family and also what you used to do when you were growing up. So can you talk me through your kind of background and your passion for this? I'm not even going to call it a sport because it is 3 sports put together. So it's quite an achievement to be able to do it to the level you are.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I guess my background, my dad was a GB international runner. So he competed in track and cross country. He then got into triathlon and just excelled straight away, became British champion, and then competed in European and world championships. This was, I guess, back in sort of like the 80s and 90s. I started running when I was 9. I did my first 5K, which probably sounds mad to people that are like getting into running and running a 5K now, or even just like building up to trying to run a 5K. So I did that back then. And then I did my first duathlon. I did the kids Ironman back in, I think it was 2005.
What's the kids Ironman? What distances are there?
Oh my God, I don't even know. I think it would have been like really short. It would have been like a super sprint, I think, maybe, or even shorter. It was literally just like a fun thing. It was on because, so there was an old Ironman down somewhere in Dorset in the UK. We were quite close to them at the time, and then somehow got into it, and then I entered, and I did it with my brothers as well. Did really well, like won it and like beat all the boys in my age group or whatever. And I was just like, oh, this is quite fun. And I was like doing a bit of running at the time, and then kind of just got into it from there, really. And then both my brothers as well, I guess they were my training partners like throughout being young and doing it when I was younger, because not gonna lie, like people are starting to do triathlon now, but this is like almost 20 years ago. And when you're at the age of about 10, no one's doing triathlon. So they were like my full-time training partners, and my dad obviously was there to like help us and coach us. But they did amazing. They like both ran for England. They won British and European championships, got onto like Team GB and all of that sort of stuff. So they were like super inspirational for me, and I was kind of just there trying to do it as much as possible at the time as well. That's kind of the history of it. So I carried on doing that. So at the time you'd have to, so with triathlon you would race in the summer, and then you would kind of like, you'd do a certain amount of races, and then you'd get points, so you could basically try and qualify for nationals, and then you would race for your region against like everyone else in the rest of the country. So I'd like try and race back then. This is probably at the age of about 13, I'd say. And then I came first in my region, so I went to nationals, and then went to nationals, raced at nationals, and then came third back then. And then it kind of just sort of stemmed from there, really.
And then through your teenage years as well, because it's, obviously you started quite young, which is a great advantage in terms of sport. I was having a conversation earlier in the week with a podcast episode that's coming soon about the mileage that you put in. We all often think, I've taken 4 days off exercise, I have lost every mile that I have ever done in my entire life. Whereas, when you start early, suddenly when you get to, age 18, you have however many years, you already have a decade under your belt of miles and just getting used to that kind of element of training. But then through your teenage years, it's quite difficult when puberty kicks in. Also, the differences then between male and female performance. It's tricky, isn't it? Because it does just change slightly. The boys get stronger. The women, they're going through this massive bodily change, and it's really difficult to kind of manage that gap in performance. So when you said, you would train with your brothers and that sort of thing, it's quite difficult as we grow up to then actually keep up that element of sport, which is why you see a lot of girls in PE not doing sport at all, and also just female performance through teenage years really drastically declining.
Yeah, 100%, definitely. I think as well, it's at a time where you're studying for exams. It's maybe like you're sort of starting GCSEs, or you may have even started going through all of those hormonal cycles before that. And it's really tricky. And then trying to balance sort of like all of the social things of being a teenager, plus all of your hormones, plus exams at school. and then trying to do free sports as well. It's like chaotic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's mad. So yeah, no, it was definitely a tricky time, and you kind of just gotta prioritize one thing, or try and prioritize the most important things at the time.
And then you took a bit of a gap from your triathlon, so you kind of took a bit of a break from, was it about age 16? But then you've kind of gone full circle and come back into it, which I often think is quite interesting, because if you'd carried on doing it, obviously we can't predict what would have happened in the past, but because you've taken a break and come back in, you always have this new passion for it. You are like, I know what I've done before, I know what I'm doing, I know the sport. Obviously, lots of people are doing it now, which actually is really nice to have that community element. But how did you kind of find that reaffiliation to go back into the triathlon world after a bit of time off?
It's so cute. It's like, it's really different, because it's difficult, because I was doing it for a different reason back then. I was doing it because I wanted to try and get into a certain team, or to try and reach certain targets. Whereas now I've kind of just got back into it. I'm doing it with my boyfriend, and he's like loving it and enjoying it. And we're kind of just at a point where we're trying to decide what sort of direction we go in. But like, really, it's not our full-time job, and we are just doing it for fun, I guess, and just enjoying it, and kind of like like fully seeing where it goes. But it's so different now. It's got a lot more attention on the sport, and I think that's kind of come from the running trends that's kind of been pushed in the last kind of couple of years. I think maybe since sort of COVID, I think it kind of boomed, and then it's kind of been progressing since then. And then triathlon's kind of come out of that running trend, I think. So everyone's trying to, I think a lot of people are trying to get into it, and it's amazing for the sport, and it's like pushing so much attention onto the sport as well.
I think it's quite interesting, the impact of trends. And I think a lot of this will be because of social media, because pretty much everyone's online and interacting with whatever trend is going on. So it was, as you said, running in lockdown. There was just this massive boom of running. And then now I would say it's kind of getting a little bit into road cycling. And having been a road cyclist for, I don't know, it feels weird, like in your 20s, to be like, for a decade I've been doing this. But it has been a decade, which is quite funny, because not many girls cycled really, and especially at school. You know, that some people, they wouldn't like make fun of me, my friends, but they'd be like, oh, you know, you and your lycra and stuff like that. Whereas now they're in all of their, like, you know, trendy cycling kit, and it's cool now. And I found that even over lockdown, when everybody went on Strava, because previously it was just like, you know, just people who actually I did sport with on Strava, whereas suddenly everyone's joining and requesting to follow you. And it just is quite funny how the impact of that is. And I think it's really positive. But I'm sure you find the same thing when you've known like the triathlon world for so long, and suddenly it's like, oh wait, this is cool now. Like, I've been here for ages, but you all think it's cool, but you didn't before. It's just quite funny how that changes, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it's mad. I mean, I think about this all the time, because I think cycling, I've kind of maybe made it a little bit more trendy. But if you saw me going for a run, it's not cool in any shape or form. Like, I'll literally just wear like things that I've had for 20 years and just go out and get it done. And there's no sort of, I don't know, taking photos or any aesthetic anything about my running. It's like just super plain, simple, stripped back. And yeah, I think that's just how it will always be for me.
Very difficult to take aesthetic photos when you're running. I don't know how people seem to do it. Some people do it so well, so beautifully, but I have not mastered that, and I don't think I will. I think I'll just keep my running for myself just now.
Yeah, definitely. It's hard, isn't it? Because a lot of I guess there's a lot of people that run in communities or run in groups, but if you're running on your own, I don't know how you kind of really navigate that. I mean, some people do it and they do it really well. I haven't really dived into that kind of world yet, where I can take content of myself whilst running. But yeah, maybe that's to come. Yeah.
We kind of mentioned a little bit about community, and obviously you're based in London, which is like the epicenter of the cool triathlon people who we were kind of alluding to back then. And there's so many run groups, there's so many like cycling around Richmond Park, there's just so many people. And how do you find that community element of training, but also general life training in London? Because although it might look glamorous, I'm sure it is glamorous, there's a lot of traffic, a lot of pollution. To actually go out road cycling is a bit of a mission. So what's kind of the top things that you like? And maybe we should do like 3 stars and a wish, do you know? Do you remember you did that in primary school? Like, what are the things that you like, and what are some things that you're like, oh man, this really sucks?
I guess, like, if we're talking about cycling, because I think cycling's the thing in London that's tricky. Running, you can kind of get by. And again, I mean, with swimming, it's almost better because you've got so much more choice in terms of like, there's loads of pools and stuff everywhere. Maybe compared to out somewhere more rural, you've got the choice of one pool. But yeah, with cycling, I would say that I try and do most of my riding out of London. So like, if I can just like quickly get out into that kind of countryside on the outskirts, then that's ideal because that's so much better. In terms of being in London, it's basically just Regent's and Richmond Park, and again, both mega busy. Richmond on the weekend in summer, I'm not gonna lie, I do try to avoid just because it does get really busy. And then Regent's, it's just a case of getting up early and getting up there before the traffic starts, or when the traffic's like not as bad. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a lot of the cycling in London is just about seeing people, meeting people. It's kind of my social time as well, because with triathlon, you're spending so much time on top of working full time, training. Your free time to try and socialize and see as many friends as possible does get quite limited, and that kind of gets pushed to the end of the list. So if I can kind of integrate my cycling or even any of the free sports with sort of socializing and seeing friends.
Yeah, and you mentioned that your boyfriend also does triathlon and you kind of train together. My husband was a professional cyclist, so when we did cycle together, there was a bit of a gap. So I would like join him for easy rides or whatever like that. But naturally, there's a gap between men and women, and some people find that quite controversial. But physically, biologically, unless you're talking ultra distance, when it does kind of close the gap and women are actually, in fact, sometimes faster and they go further than men, there is that difference. So how do you manage that? Or do you train together kind of regularly?
I would say a lot of our training is together, especially cycling. It is. In terms of managing the difference, I would say a lot of the time, we can either like, if we're doing like an intervals on the bike, then that's quite easy because we can just go off, do our separate intervals and then kind of meet at the end or meet in between each interval, for example. Or if we're away and we're in another country and there's mountains, then I just say, okay, see you in half an hour, meet you at the top of the mountain. And that works perfectly fine. But also, if we go back to women and hormones and things, there's some days or some weeks where if I'm on my period, I'm just completely like, I have no energy, no power. So I just fully have to just like let him go and I just get on with it. And then I'll catch him up and see him when I see him. But I think more recently, we did quite a lot of cycling where it was just us two. But more recently, we've been trying to mix with different groups that are maybe more of his ability that can try and push him a bit more. And then I kind of, if we're with those kind of faster paced people that are more his ability, then I'm just trying to like stay on. Or I kind of like do my kind of session and then catch them up or whatever it is. So yeah, it kind of works, I think. But I do worry about him sometimes because I think like you're always riding at my pace and like it's hard for me if I'm trying to push, but obviously it's easier for you if you're trying to stay with me. So
it's the balance, isn't it?
Well,
have to balance, but also, it is nice to spend time together. And I think on the bike, you actually have so many random conversations, especially when you go on a group ride with someone you've never met. Often it's like a middle-aged man that you would never usually have a conversation with, because paths wouldn't cross. And you're just kind of talking about life and all of these things. And you actually have these lovely conversations, which I think it's such a beautiful element of human nature that often people don't really interact with each other as much anymore. Whether it's don't even make eye contact or smile if you pass someone in the street. But I think it's just really lovely that you can have that part of sport, and community in sport is such an important thing. And, you know, when we talk about women's performance as well, and just understanding our bodies and our natural cycle and how our bodies react to sport at different times, you know, we'll feel strong some weeks and less strong other weeks. Like connecting with other women in sport and having that kind of community around that, it normalizes these feelings of, if you just train with men, you think, oh my goodness, I'm rubbish, you know, because you are trying quite hard, is the reality of it, especially when it's pure cardio. Do you know, maybe if you're going to the gym and stuff, it's slightly different, but when you're talking cycling, it's hard. So I think that having the community is such an important part of sport, and you just really bond with it. And it's like what you said, the social aspect as well. So how has that been in London? Have you managed to find those like-minded people quite easily? What's been your tactic for that?
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, at the start, I think because I was getting back into cycling around the COVID kind of time. And I think everyone, I don't know, well, actually, I'm just speaking on behalf of myself, but I think I started to become a little bit more introvert at the time. And I guess from just like not really seeing people or speaking to people that much and sort of spending so much time on your own or in really small groups. So at the start, I found it quite difficult, I think, like trying to then merge more with people and just be a bit more social, which was I found like quite strange because I've always been like very, I don't know, sort of like open and easy to speak to and all of that sort of stuff. And I found it kind of hard after COVID. But then I think it's actually cycling that really pushed me to be like, okay, go and meet those people, or sometimes you have a safety blanket if you have a partner that does it with you and you just kind of rely on just doing stuff with them. And that's why I think it's so amazing, all of the people that don't live with someone or don't have a boyfriend or girlfriend, husband or wife, that are doing it as well, because they have to just go and be like, oh, I just want to come and join a group ride, or like, can I come along to something? And they've got to go and turn up on their own. And that's just like amazing. And that is one thing that London is really, really good for, because there's just so many of these little groups and things going on all the time. You can join all these group chats. They're in all different parts of London. So it's easy, whether you're north, east, south, or west, to go out on these different rides and things. But yeah, the community is amazing. There's just so much going on all the time and like so many things to join in on. And I honestly don't think I've ever met anyone that's not nice. Everyone is so nice. Everyone just wants to be there and meet more people and just like ride bikes and drink good coffee. Yeah, no, it's an amazing community, and I'm sure it is outside of London as well, in all of the other pockets of the UK. I think I've been in different pockets of the UK before, and it's the same. So yeah.
Yeah, it's quite funny, isn't it, how you're like, everyone's actually so nice, because I think probably as a byproduct of COVID, to an extent, of having enforced isolation and time apart from general communities and just meeting new people. And then I think as well as social media, because everyone seems quite inaccessible, and you know that everyone's living their best lives and that kind of side of it, that we are actually all just humans, and we are all, generally speaking, we're all quite nice, do you know? And everyone just kind of wants to chat and like have a bit of connection, a bit of, you know, human connection with people. It's actually such a natural element that, you know, social media will kind of tick the box of interacting with people, but it doesn't have that, like, that actual dopamine of, I actually have that connection with people and I feel like I'm part of a community, and, you know, you just kind of feel seen in that. So I think that's such an important part, just as you said there. But then also, what about balancing life and training? You kind of alluded to it, and I know you said that you've just started a full-time job as well. So how do you balance training for three sports, keeping somewhat sane and working full-time, as well as doing social media? What's your average week in the life looking like?
Oh my goodness. I mean, it's mad. I can't lie. It's crazy. And I'm kind of like, yeah, I was saying that I've obviously come from working fully remote to then being in the office in central London 4 days a week, which I love. And I'm like, absolutely love the career change that I've just gone through, and just trying to like get super involved in all of that. And it's really, really exciting and really new. But I guess in terms of like trying to navigate the free, I mean, commuting to work, that kind of gives me a little bit of like getting in a bit more mileage. It's not super efficient in terms of my training. But yeah, it's just extra mileage. Or like recently I just ran home from work, so I'll run the distance home but then add on some extra mileage there and try and do my long run maybe in the week. So then at the weekends I've got both days to try and maybe do like a bike in the morning and then a run off the bike some weekends, or do a lot and then do another long bike ride on the second day of the weekend, or a long run. So the weekends, yeah, the weekends are like fully booked on training. And then the week is just trying to fit in training around the work. And then social media, I'm gonna be completely honest and say that I did have much more time for it previously, and at the moment it's just like it kind of just has to fit in when it fits in. I guess as well with all of the sort of content that I'm taking and posting, it's all, I guess, kind of like natural in a way that I'm just taking that content anyway. I'm taking all of that stuff on a daily basis. And then in terms of like figuring out where it goes on the feed or if it's relevant, then that's what I do after. But I still just like take all the content as you do and then figure it out when I have time. But yeah, sometimes I'll literally, I don't know, if I'm cycling into work in the morning and maybe try and get in a few like extra laps in the morning before work, then go to work, then maybe run home and then have dinner, and then it's like literally 9 o'clock, and then I'm kind of like, well, I guess I can try and do some editing photos now. Yeah, it's manic, but like I'm trying to make it work, and it kind of just is what it is.
And then building up your social media and doing some work with brands and things like that, is that something that you are planning on going into in the future? Was it something that you were just posting, like, you know, photos that you liked, content that you liked? You kind of said it's quite natural and just bringing people along, which I think, you know, we alluded to before we started recording. You know, people just love the behind the scenes element of it, you know, and that sort of what are real people doing. And I think that probably links into people just want that human connection, you know, like knowing that people are just doing normal things like everybody else. So what's your kind of plan with that, or how is that kind of unfolded for you?
I don't really know, to be honest. It's fully, I think it's fully always going to be what I want to put on there in a funny way. Like, I'm never going to do something just because it's a trend or because other people are doing it and they're sort of seeing good results in terms of engagement or anything like that. I will always just like stay loyal to what I kind of want to post. But then yeah, it's just a case of some brands that have been getting in touch with me, whether it's to gift content that I kind of then promote, or whether it's I've been doing like a couple of shoots for brands. So I've got one actually like in 2 weeks' time in Barcelona for a cycling brand, which is really cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm so excited. It's like, yeah, it's kind of only something that I've been doing maybe in like the last 6 months. So I think just being able to have these opportunities and experiences just through posting content that I would post, whether one person was looking at it or 1,000 people are looking at it. It's just crazy. I like still don't understand it really. I'm kind of just like, but I just like these photos and I would post them anyway, even if it was just my mum and dad watching. So yeah, so then to be able to have these like really cool brands being like, come to Barcelona and we'll like do some really like cool shoots, and then you'll like obviously be on all of the social and websites for the new product that's coming out. It's like, it's insane, and I'm like loving it. So just gotta like try and balance everything and do as much as I can. I think take as many opportunities as I can.
Exactly. You're not going to regret saying yes to these opportunities, even if it does mean that you're a bit manic for a while. You know, it is just trying as much as you can. And then also kind of, I love how you say it's just what you want to post. You're not just doing it to post it for the Instagram or do things like that. It is that level of, you know, you actually really like it. It's authentic content. And I think that people see that authenticity when people like do present that online. rather than kind of forcing it. And I think that when it is authentic, then it becomes a lot more sustainable as well, because it's natural. And I think along with motivation was something I wanted to talk to you about, is how you balance that motivation, because if anyone's going through a training block, there's always going to be a dip. There's always going to be a time when you're not motivated, and that's when discipline kicks in. But there's always going to be a particularly low point, I think, inevitably in anyone's training block. So what's your experience been with that, and how have you dealt with it? Have you got any hot tips for anyone listening?
I kind of think about this quite a lot, to be honest, because I would say, so I kind of go on this structure, which I think is like a very well-known structure, particularly in running. I know that it's something that people do. So you do kind of like 1, 2, 3 weeks where you kind of build up that mileage. And then on the 4th week, you kind of come back down. And I try and structure that, luckily, with my hormonal cycle, which kind of is, I guess, like the sort of 28 days for 4 weeks. So on that 4th week where I'm on my period and I'm just feeling like really low energy and I haven't got any power on the bike, or I don't know, I'm like feeling cramps and everything's kind of not good. Then I'll just like take any intensity out of the training and bring the mileage down as well. And then that's, I would say as well, like mentally, that's usually the week where sometimes I might have a cry and then I'm kind of like, why am I crying? I don't understand. And then my boyfriend's like, well, I know why. It's time of the month. I mean, I think generally, I think I'm kind of okay, but I always listen to my body. I think like the good thing about doing sport young and having my dad as my coach, he's so understanding, and so he's always just lived by the motto of listening to your body. If you've got a tiny niggle, or if you're not feeling super strong, or if you, I don't know, even if you just had a long day at work and you're just absolutely exhausted, don't push it. Don't do that session just because it's in your calendar to do it. Just say, oh, I'll do it tomorrow, or I'll push it to next week, or I'll have that session off this week. I don't know. I think when you're less motivated, just maybe, or even swap it for something that you really like doing. Obviously, you can't do it all the time. Like, you have got to get in your like really hard intensity sessions sometimes, but if you'd rather just go and do an easy swim and enjoy it, and then maybe like, I don't know, go see your friends after, or go for a coffee, do that instead. Like there's not going to be any issue at all. The week later, I always say this, like, will I be thinking, oh my God, I didn't do that run interval session last week. What, is everything going to go pear-shaped? And like, no way, no one's going to care. You're not going to care. Your body's going to care, because it's going to be like, yes, you finally gave me some room to breathe. So yeah, in terms of motivation, I think just like fully listen to your body.
And I think that's actually really good advice, but also quite difficult to do when you bring in rest into it. And it's been quite a contentious topic of, some people have that rest day guilt. Have I earned it? Have I done enough? And I think that if you have a training plan and it's penciled in, then it is easy to say, I have my rest day because I've done my sessions. But when it's perhaps you're listening to your body and you're not feeling so great, or that's when things like Whoop have come in. So I've recently got myself a Whoop, which I'm really trying to decide if I like it or not. I'm very much on the fence right now. Because I would be one who would be a bit more intuitive. I know what I'm feeling, kind of similar to what you're saying. I know when I'm tired, I know when I'm not. However, I can see why it legitimizes people saying, I need to have a day off, I need to have rest because I'm on whatever, like 30% recovery or whatever. It's interesting because then a lot of people talk about that rest day guilt. And because you have then social media into it as well, and people are always like, there's always, if you have social media, you're always going to have someone who's doing their best run ever, because that's just inevitably what it is. But that's, even if they do one run a year, that could be the only one that you see, and you're like, oh my goodness, they're so great. And that could be the day that you're having your enforced rest day, and it could all just kind of spiral in your mind. So how do you find keeping grounded in that, listening to your body and staying true to it, and also just in like allowing your body to rest? Because it's such an important part of training, is the actual recovery and rest. And it's when you make those gains that will actually make a difference.
I don't really like structure it in. I think it's, do you know what? I think it's usually comes after the weekend. because the weekend is usually where I kind of like try and, because you've got all day, both days, I try and kind of like get in as much as possible then. And then I think, okay, like I can either do some sort of recovery day on the Monday and then maybe take a rest day on Tuesday, or sometimes I just do a rest day on Monday, or if I'm feeling fine, I kind of just push through and then maybe have it on Wednesday. I don't really know. I think for me, because I've always listened to my body, and maybe because I've been doing it for such a long time, it's that kind of comes naturally to me. Whereas I can see that for people that have maybe just picked up triathlon or running and they've only been doing it, say, for a year or 6 months, they probably don't understand all of these funny things that their body is feeling from doing all of those sports and using all of those muscles just yet. And that will come with time. So I would say for those guys, like, yeah, maybe even write it down. I think like that sometimes helps, and say you might be able to see then a pattern of the days that you're feeling more tired, and then you can maybe structure that into your training plan.
Yeah, and I think that's also where a coach comes in. And you mentioned there, I was going to ask you whether you are a coach, and you said that your dad coaches you, which I want to know about that relationship. How does that dynamic work? Because I think a lot of people would be like, "Oh my gosh, I would not want my parent to coach me." But obviously, your dad is vastly experienced in the field of triathlon, so that inevitably is a major advantage. So, what's that dynamic like?
I mean, he knows that if he tells me something and I don't want to hear it, then it's not going to go down too well. But he's obviously known that for years. Like, I've obviously grown up with him and he knows me very well. So he probably knows how to kind of say things in a way that he thinks that it'll get taken well from me. But generally, I mean, we get on so well, and like everything he says, I take on board. He usually has pretty similar opinions and advice as my brothers as well. So then when I've got three people saying, no, you should do this, as opposed to maybe what I want to do, I'm kind of like, okay, I guess I need to do that then. But yeah, I'll just fully trust everything that they say, because they have so much experience, and they're so knowledgeable on all three disciplines.
And then looking ahead for the rest of 2024, what is in your calendar? What goals are you working towards, and what do you want to achieve?
So the main race that we've got booked in is the first 70.3, sorry. That's our first half Ironman, and that's in September in Austria. I think it's we need to kind of maybe do a race beforehand. I'm kind of just winging it at the moment, I'm not gonna lie. So we kind of need to like figure out nutrition and how we're gonna race that race. But yeah, in terms of other goals, I mean, it hasn't really been race orientated, I would say, because it's kind of just something that I've kind of picked back up, and then trying to build up a level of, I guess, kind of like hitting sort of goals within those three sports. And to be fully honest, I don't think I'm kind of at the level that I want to be at, or that I think I might be able to have potential of hitting in all of the three sports at the moment. So it's kind of just a case of doing this race, seeing where I'm at, and then seeing how much I can improve from there, as the next year and next season kind of comes around.
And what do you perceive for yourself as success?
It's hard to say, but I would say with these three sports, it's kind of, I guess it's kind of just hitting sort of times and targets, or power and speed within those three sports, that I kind of set myself as these kind of goals. Maybe because I've hit them before in the past when I was younger. Like my 5K PB, I haven't got close to since I was 16. So everyone's getting 5K PBs, and I'm kind of like, it's been over 10 years since I've had a 5K PB. So I should probably try and do that. So yeah, I mean, my goals are kind of different, I guess, because of the sport that I did when I was young. But yeah, I would say it's mostly just trying to kind of improve on where you were maybe 6 months ago or where you were 6 months before that. And then in 6 months' time, I can try and improve across all three sports. And as long as I'm doing that, then I'm just, yeah, this is why we do it.
Exactly. And how do you kind of keep your channel vision on you and kind of just what you're talking about there and not have that comparison kind of kicking in? Because I think that's quite a prevalent thing, especially in sport. I know I found it. You know, like you look at other people and think, oh my goodness, and they might just be on a really good day and I might be on a terrible day, or they might just be better. Do you know, it's such a fluid thing, I think, performance fitness. It's not like you learn a skill of how to do it and then you've learnt it for life. As you said before, you know, when you're 16, you're still like, you've got your 5k PB from then, but if you don't keep that up, you've got to restart somewhere. And as we said, you know, you still have the mileage in your legs, but it's just that top end fitness. So how do you find that comparison perhaps with your younger self, but also your contemporaries around you, and just kind of knowing your own self-worth within it?
For me, I can kind of, luckily with things like Strava, you actually have a really good history and backlog of where you were 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago. So that's a really good sign of me being able to see how much I'm improving. I think I probably need to enter some more races, I'm not going to lie. And then that will give me a bit more of an understanding of where I'm at. Because at the moment, I'm kind of just, I think I said this on a recent Instagram post, and it was about how I just do all three sports because I enjoy doing all three sports. It's not like whether I'm signed up to a race or not, I would still do it. Even if I couldn't race, for example, if I was banned from racing for 5 years, I would still do all three sports. I wouldn't just be like,
oh, doing.
I don't know.
You just went very dramatic all of a sudden.
Oh God, yeah, I know. Sorry, I don't know. It's kind of like football, isn't it? Where like if they get a red card and they can't play, but obviously that's a minimum amount of time. They're not going to be like, oh, I'm going to stop playing football because I can't play the next match. It's the same kind of thing. Like I just do all three because I love doing it and I like doing that in my free time that I have. So yeah, I probably should do some more races. So maybe that's what's coming up. That's the exciting thing. Some changes on Instagram, maybe. We'll see. And some races.
Are we allowed to know any spoilers, or are you just gonna like wave that little like teaser in front of us?
Oh, I don't know. I don't really know. It's all a bit TBC, but we'll see.
Exciting. Well, what a great point to end on. And if people want to follow you along on social media, where should they go, and also keep up with what races you're doing, obviously how you get on in your half Ironman, and then see, you know, these changes that you're putting out in your content as well? Where should they go?
It's just Albany Burton on Instagram.
Incredible. Well, I will link that below. And thank you so much for coming on today and chatting me through all things triathlon. And I think it's quite funny talking about motivation, because I think you're so intrinsically motivated that you're like, I would just do it anyway. I just like doing it. And if someone's listening to us and thinking, oh my goodness, why? Just try different sports and see what you actually like. Like, what do you actually feel that you just love doing? Do you know, skills aside, ability aside, what makes you actually feel great and fills your cup up of just happiness and motivation? And, you know, it's very much just trying what you can until you find that part of life. So I think that's such a refreshing approach to sport and performance. So thank you for talking me through that.
Oh, that's no problem at all. Thank you. And thanks for your time.